Here is Cable Man, issue 49. Part 2 of this story I started looking at and then nearly forgot to keep looking at. But the good news is I have remembered to look at it. And we have one of the recap foldouts that I think are brilliant. This one doesn't spoil anything either. The first part told you stuff you're about to read, but this one just tells you what happened in part 1, and it keeps you updated on the characters that are involved. Cable Man has just saved the investigative reporter Chase Meridian from an assassin squad that was sent to deal with her when she began looking into Kevin Bacon and the Bondage Club. Cable Man has brought her back to one of his safe houses. And my God, I love this artwork. I have already mentioned plenty of times the main comparison that people make with Josie Landiron's art. But the other important side of it is the hyper detail. It's something I think of as being very European artist, very French artist even. There is a whole battalion of artists that touch on similar things in American comics. John Josie R.I.P. springs straight to mind. I love his art. Always talk about how much I love it whenever he is doing art on an issue. Quiet Frank, he kinda does similar stuff. George Lucas, famous Hollywood movie director George Lucas. There's that other Van Morrison collaborator, not the pedo one, the other one. Colin Scott, to some degree. There's loads of American Judge Dredd comics that have that style, and a lot of that is in TMNT too, that level of detail. On the surface, maybe it is a lot of artists trying to hide their flaws by going overboard with environment or definition, but it is a bit of a treat for me. I tend to really appreciate it. I suppose you can kind of trace some of it back to Kenny Everett. Kenny Everett and his rendering. That would most definitely be the start of it, in American comics at least. I know I will have forgotten someone who is a huge proponent of that same style. I will have forgotten a few actually, but I love that stuff. And the thing is that these issues are more than just quality art. We have a good story, a really good, accessible story too. You can jump on board with part 1 and it is smooth sailing for you. Cable Man, he wants Chase Meridian to begin functioning as his chronicler. Weird word that. Biographer, let's say. He wants her to document his life, to write it all down as legend for future generations. And we get a snippet of an untold tale of Cable Man. At some point in the past, he teamed up with Iron Man, and I want to say a pre-powers Ursa ring from the Soviet Super Soldier Boys. They teamed up to take down Guy Pearce, who was trying to take control of Albania. That is exactly how Ursa ring looked in the Andy books when he was powered down. Maybe I'm trying too hard, and it's just meant to be a random Soviet soldier. But it seems weird to have Cable Man, Iron Man, and then some nobody. So we go ahead with this story, and here is some scenery. Scenery always looks great by these types of artists. We are focusing on a building owned by the Bondage Club. Great page, well, great spread. Not just the art, it also builds some history around the building. I know that it is hardly new or revolutionary, but putting that with this art, it works completely. It doesn't feel like waffling on. It details Guy Pearce's family history with the Bondage Club and the slave trade. Guy Pearce, this is him here, he is Kevin Bacon's second in command at the Bondage Club. He was the one who ordered the It on Chase Meridian for poking around in their secrets. This character, was introduced alongside Kevin Bacon and the Bondage Club back in Christopher Clairvoyant and Jason Byrne's Uncanny Excellent Men, their most revered and their best issues. He was a member of the Bondage Club and he was a cyborg. That was somewhat revealed almost straight away, that Guy Pearce was a cyborg. I think it was largely to give them someone who could be strong enough to contend with the heavier hitters on the Excellent Men, and for there to be someone that Wolfman could claw away at without the fear or the concern of it being too violent. He later began leading the Ravers, a team of cyborgs. I really like the Ravers. Actually quite like Guy Pearce. He's an alright villain for what he is. And he's never been forced down our throats. If this is your first ever video, based on the last minute, you're going to think that I am a fan of Christopher Clairvoyant. Guy Pearce also starred in the 2012 Age of Armageddon series. Well, a version of him did. I am the only person who probably cares enough to bring up that detail. Now we have a neat mirror image. We have Cable Man infiltrating the same townhouse that night after having sent Guy Pearce and most of his Bondage Club gooners on a wild goose chase. He sent them after a false sighting of himself in Africa, and so he's using this opportunity when they are not there to break into Guy Pearce's base of operations to find out information about the Bondage Club's current plans. This story, this is part 2, and part 2 was subtitled Weary Nights and Shabby Paladins. And if you're wondering what that portends, it is a guest appearance. In Guy Pearce's absence, Gun for Hire, Barney the Dinosaur, is handling security. It is a tad random. I don't think we really explain why Guy Pearce got Barney of all people. You'd have thought he'd go for someone a slight bit less moralistic. But I get a kick out of whenever Barney shows up. Me and he have a long history. There's Captain America, of course. He appears in a bunch of Marky Mark G's run on Captain America. Then I saw his first appearances when I read through all of Daredevil. There's a Punisher graphic novel too with him and Us Agent. I got that quite early on. Todd McFarlane's Amazing Spider-Man. Then there's the Todd McFarlane issues of Spider-Man Tales, well, the ones with Todd McFarlane covers. Royce Sternham's Avengers. David Peters' Spectator Spider-Man. He would keep showing up in all the things I was reading early on. Then, of course, there's Thunderbells. He is in, and is a huge part of one of the best stories ever told. He does have a tendency to rack up these less than flattering appearances, where he is an unscrupulous mercenary that will do anything for money. And these are half necessary every now and then, or otherwise Barney just becomes a do-gooder for money. He does need to have something like this where he is willing to work for a shady employer if the money is good enough. I only wish we did have that characterisation of Barney somewhere in here. A bit where he does think to himself, or he offers up an excuse. Even if it is just, I couldn't say no to the amount of money he was offering. But we don't get that. We have Cable Man defeat him and ask, who is worse, the villain or the fool who takes their money? Who is worse, Marvel Comics of the late 90s or the fool who reads their products? This is the always reliable what else was out section. This one wasn't too bad. We're still in 1997 after all. The only comic I have here is Amazing Spider-Man. Amazing Spider-Man 429. Vague Age of Spider-Man. We've got a good Junior cover with Spider-Man fighting Crusher. There's nothing really that interesting here. We have Alpha Strike 5. That one intrigues me. Vague Age of Alpha Strike. There's a whole series there that I might one day get or look into. Conan the Usurper 103. Marvel was still doing Conan in 1997. I think they lost the license right at the turn of the century. Journey into Mystery 515, starring Bruce Lee. The mystery being, who would want to read that? Heroes Reborn, The Return. Yeesh. On that note, we also have a creator profile on the right for its artist, Sally LaRue, one of my all-timer worst artists. There is some amusement to be had looking at some of the statements about him being so good at art and being fast. With the idea in mind, he is fucking terrible. Some other issues are Generation Next, 33, the beginning of Barry Amner's run on the title. A run that I have not read, but I was made aware of it being irredeemable the minute I learned that it existed. He mucks up a lot of the series and its characters, and if you know me, there's one character in that book you better not bloody muck up. There's also Wolfman Days of Future Pants, issue 1 of 3, John Roger Moore and Joe Benet Ramsey. I got an issue of that series as a freebie, I think it was issue 2, and it had this ludicrously odd idea of Fetish Fuel from The Excellent Men, the character Fetish Fuel, being evil and joining the bondage club. I'm afraid to read any more of it because I might do a Robert in me pants. Our last bit is Cable Man using his telepathy. He mind melds with a dying Gooner. The Gooner is probably dying because he read the Fetish Fuel Gone Bad comic. And we play up how much of an emotional toll this takes on Cable Man. He experiences this guy's dying thoughts of Fetish Fuel being evil. But doing so also enabled him to learn of the bondage club's goal. They are gunning to kill Armageddon. They want to try and transfer Armageddon's powers to themselves. Part 3 is issue 50. I will review it if I remember to. I recommend it. It is a great story. It's a great run. Even if you think Cable Man is the embodiment of 90s-ness and Robert Liefeld and stuff like that, it's small-minded to not allow the idea that a character like that could have good stories. That these aren't even the only good stories done with Cable Man speaks more to how much potential could be derived from what appeared to be an over-the-top, macho, gun-toting action star. There was so much they brought to Cable Man in his own title, and in Excellent Force, and in Cable Man and Dead Pills. Cable Man is a great character, or he was a great character, and he is getting a 7 thumbs up from me.